Hello and welcome. We are excited to introduce you to the Merging Point when social justice meets social solutions, the official podcast of the Center for Social Solutions here at the University of Michigan. I'm Earl Lewis, director of the Center for Social Solutions, and I also will serve as your host. And we would explore a complex set of social issues in today's society and attempt to not only explore those issues, but find and suggest resolutions or solutions. And we're going to do so with expert guests from a variety of backgrounds. Our vision is grand, but essential. We envision a world where opportunities and resources are distributed equitably, fostering an environment where everyone can thrive. I founded the Center for Social Solutions 5 years ago, in 2018, to promote academic research in social policy that serves the common good in four program areas. The first, diversity and democracy. Here we sought to leverage diversities to advance the broader American democratic project. Next area was water, equity, and security. The goal here was to focus on protecting and ensuring equitable access to Earth's perhaps most precious commodity or resource, water. The third area was the future work, which centered on preserving and exploring the dignity of labor in an automated world. And then finally, slavery and its aftermath, which confronts the history, impact, and continuation of slavery in all facets of our lives. Within the last initiative lies the project Crafting Democratic Futures. This project is a partnership between 8 or 9 academic institutions across the United States with the goal of utilizing community-based reparations to confront our nation's history and to actually begin to craft and forge a better future. To accomplish this mission, we've used a number of media, from community forums to theater performances, written publications, and most recently, a 1-hour documentary. And I'm here today with Daryl Ford Williams, the executive producer of The Cost of Inheritance, an America Reframed special. The film traces the nation's legacy of systemic inequalities to modern day America. The film follows the long journey of individuals and communities seeking to make reparations a reality at the individual, local, and national level. The Cost of Inheritance is a co-production of WQED, the University of Michigan Center for Social Solutions, and is presented in partnership with World, an American Documentary. Daryl, welcome, and thank you for being part of today's conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Today's conversation then will explore media, specific documentary filmmaking, as a tool for advancing social justice. So let's get into it. Documentaries can serve as these tools for advancing change, for informing publics. So I'll start with a question. Why do you think the documentary format is a powerful way to tell this story and to make an argument about reparative justice?
So, I think that documentaries serve a variety of purposes for many subjects, especially when it is a subject that requires the kind of background and common understanding of the issue that this particular topic does. A documentary allows you to explore the context, to give a level playing field of understanding, particularly for public broadcasting, that the public, in the most broad sense, can take in, absorb, and start to understand all on the same level. And then I think that the documentary format allows for equitable voices, kind of a shared experience. And if we're really addressing a topic like this one, that might evoke a lot of different emotions. You want to make sure that what you're doing is approaching it from a human centered storytelling perspective. And I hope that that's what we've achieved in the production of The Cost of Inheritance.
Thank you. And let's follow up on that last point. So there are a few subject matters more complex, more personal, in some cases more painful than the story of slavery. But then, we both know, the story doesn't end with slavery. It goes into Jim Crow and periods of mass incarceration and other chapters in American history. How did you go about thinking about crafting a story that ties these personal moments of recovery with the larger themes of history and reparations?
Reparations is such a huge topic. I mean, first of all, we had to come to an understanding for the entire production team and for our goal setting process that what we're talking about are reparations for African Americans. We could talk about reparations in a global sense. That we've talked about reparations from World War II. We've talked about reparations for Native Americans. There's so many different ways to think about reparations, but we had a singular goal, and that was to talk about reparations for African Americans. Well, that's still an enormous topic. You could talk about the various metrics that divide us when we think about equity today, from healthcare to education to housing. You go down all of the social metrics, and any of those would be very important topics to dig into. But we still could not fit all of that within the course of an hour. So we decided that the most unifying themes that were quantifiable had to do more specifically with wealth disparity and land dispossession. Many of the other topics you might debate the root cause, but these were very apparent. And so we decided that those would be our unifying themes that we could fit into the course of an hour. So that's where we began.
As you were pulling together the threads of a narrative and a film, what ethical considerations did you have to really bring to the fore, particularly as you navigated all of these individual stories and you were trying to be both respectful and responsible?
One of the first things that we have to do in convincing people that they should share their stories with us is to establish a level of trust to help the subjects understand the background, the experience of the production team, and what our goal is. So, conveying those elements are essential in convincing anyone to share their personal stories and to share their pain and their journey, um, particularly in the course of a reparations exploration. The ethical piece is it's about doing our own due diligence and making sure that we have done a level of research that lets potential subjects know that we have taken the care and the time to understand the history, but that we are not finished. We are still leaving space to include their story, their perspectives. And I think all of those elements add up to a level of respect and ethics that are essential in documentary filmmaking.
It's clear, at least from where I sit, for anyone who will watch this film, and they will experience emotional highs and lows because it tells the story about individuals, but it also tells the story of a nation and perhaps even a world. So, as you went about the filmmaking process, how did you deal with the sort of emotional highs and lows of producing a film that, in and of itself, could be viewed as taxing in a certain kind of way?
Yeah, so from a personal and from a team perspective, we allowed space to have conversations that didn't necessarily find a space in the film because that isn't always the appropriate mechanism for exploring this is not a personal story. But all of us as people of color, and that was the majority of the production team, felt this very deeply, felt this very personally. We had days when we were just angry. We were just hurting at the realization that this was our history and that there are indeed so many elements that we deal with on a microaggression level every single day. Most of us are female on the production team. So to have females of color who are reflecting on this, the trials and tribulations of our past that still follow us today, uh, needed some venting. So we took the time to vent and to allow each other to be heard.
You've referenced team several times, and so collaboration is certainly part of the filmmaking process. Talk a little bit about the team.
This was a powerhouse team. I can't tell you how proud I am to have landed this team. Our director, Yoruba Richin, I found because of her past work, and she has done work on reparations in South Africa. She has worked in the past with a writer producer team called Truth Aid, and that is Maret Mandefro and Lacey Schwartz Delgado. And so they were the producing entity that really pulled a lot of the research and the interviews together in support of Yoruba's vision. Iris Sampson worked with me on Harbor from the Holocaust, and so I brought her back on as associate producer. She has a tremendous skill set producing her own content, but also supporting a production process in a way that is respectful and mindful of the budget and the goals of the production. So that was the key team. Our director of photography, Keith Walker, has done a lot of work with Oprah, shot some of the Meghan and Harry interviews, and has many credits to his title. And Frank Caliero, who is a director of photography for WQED, was part of this production team as well. He shot part of Harbor from the Holocaust. This was an all star team.
Sounds like it. And so there's the team, and then there are the scholars that you also collaborated with. And so, how do you go about identifying the scholars?
You know, typically that's one of the heavier lifts to find scholars, but because of the relationship with the University of Michigan and the partner universities, we had scholarship baked in. And so it was in participating in the all teams convening that we were able to glean some of our very first information and direction on how we should proceed, the materials that would be relevant for us to read and digest to understand the breadth and scope of this story. So having that kind of academic, scholarly infrastructure was essential in this production.
And then I'm worried about some of the individuals who actually appear in the film. How did you go about identifying them and then securing their participation?
At one of the all team convenings of the university partners, we're all, of course, this is in the midst of the pandemic, but we were all on Zoom, uh, including the production team, the production lead team. And as you can see, the squares of people participating, we listened to some of the presentations and heard stories about individuals that the universities had come across, in particular the Quarterman Keller descendants. And I noticed that all of the production team was scribbling notes at the same time. And we all knew that we had heard a kernel of a story that we wanted to follow up on, and it ignited a visual for us all. And so that was one of the stories that we pursued. And then through our research, we came across even more stories of those who are doing personal reparations, of those who have fought for um, rights and equity for Black farmers. And we began to follow up in interviews, soft interviews over the phone, via email, with the subjects until we were sure that we had people who not only had a story to tell, but were good storytellers.
Talk for a little bit about not just the film, but the supporting materials that usually go into a PBS production of this kind?
Probably the biggest ancillary content that comes out of this documentary will be a robust engagement initiative. So we are partnering with PBS stations, universities, and other community entities in cities across the country to extend the conversation. You know, this documentary is really a starting point. It doesn't pretend to supply all the answers. It really is the cultivation of a conversation. And it's on a community by community basis that I think you will hear the most impactful extension of what this documentary seeks to do. So we will have the engagement piece. There will be assets available on our website that provide further exploration, further resources, a lexicon appropriate to the dialogue around reparations, a glossary of terms. So that we can use the right words when we talk about reparations and understand repair, harm, um, apology, and why those words are so deeply meaningful. And then to understand from a global context where else reparations have has been discussed, and has it been successful, has it been meaningful, and what forms has it taken. So we will have a series of academic papers provided by graduate students from the University of Michigan that explore global issues of reparations to give us context.
So, if you were sitting on a university campus or in a high school classroom, and someone, student raised his or her hand and said, "I want to become a filmmaker. What two or three or four things should I be thinking about?" What would you offer?
I would tell them that they can do it today. There's so many new voices and new perspectives um, that have often been shut out by kind of the professional cloak of documentary filmmaking. And there is a place for that. I mean, there is an editorial acumen that goes along with it. But the ubiquity of media making that is in all of our hands by virtue of our telephones is a place to start. There's no barrier now for anyone who wants to tell a story, to capture a story. Everyone can do it. The question is, do you have the editorial skill set to distill what might be fanciful or generally interesting into something that can be conveyed as a complete and evocative piece of media? So that's what I would tell um, aspiring documentarians. I would say, think about what your end product is. You already have the means to get started, but how are you going to get to the end? And when you do, what will you have accomplished?
And as you know, there are conversations across the United States, and I dare say even the world, but especially in the United States, looking at community based reparations and trying to tie local communities and their histories to the whole question of reparations from Evanston to Asheville to Providence, Rhode Island to Detroit, heading back into California. So I can imagine that the film, which you noted is the start of a conversation, not the end of the conversation, could be utilized by activists as they try to start that conversation in their communities. What do you anticipate activists taking away from the cost of inheritance?
Hmm. You know, one of the things that struck me just as a how would you use this tool um, thought is that, again, this is not the polarizing film that some might anticipate it would be. It's about people coming together. So I would expect that activists might engage people on a one to one basis. I think it teaches you that it's hard to hate up close. And so if you can get people to know each other and to reflect on what their experience would be if they were of another race. I think that is the opportunity for activists to truly make use of this documentary. I also think that the accomplishments in the reparations effort on a city by city, community by community basis are truly models for what might become a federal reparations initiative. So if you can look at the disparities that happen on a city by city level, it's much easier to convince people who know what has happened across the street or across town that this is reality based. Um, that might be the best opportunity for activists to make use of this film and the examples that it presents.
Well, Daryl, it's been a pleasure being in conversation with you today. We all look forward to deal with and confront and resolve that part of our history that we have not feel fully come to terms with. And you and your team and all who have been involved in the production of this film have been tremendous assets to those of us involved with the Crafting Democratic Futures Project. And so thank you for that partnership. And thank you for being here today.
Thank you. It has been an honor. I appreciate your leadership and the position that the University of Michigan has taken in making this all possible. So, my great thanks go out to you.
Thank you all for listening. This is really the conclusion of this episode today. It's been tremendous to think about where we've started and where we are now. And if you want to get updates and stay tuned, updated on happenings at the Center for Social Solutions, we ask you to subscribe and follow us. And there are many ways to follow us on the website, through social media channels. And if you write us, we'll write you back too. So that's a way to learn more about what we're doing. And don't forget to share your thoughts on today's episode and to make your recommendations on topics for future episodes. We always want to hear from you. We'll be back with another exciting episode. Until then, thank you. This episode of The Merging Point was recorded prior to the world premiere of The Cost of Inheritance. You can view the entire documentary as well as bonus clips now on PBS and WQED.org.